Gentlemen, we can save Europe from total destruction.
We have to show the world that not all of us will like him. It is too great a risk.
It doesn't change what we must do.
What did you have in mind?
You could serve Germany or the Fuhrer. Not both.
It's just that all that had you sent here, Colonel.
What I said was much worse.
I'm a soldier. But in serving my country, I have betrayed my conscience.
We need to reorganize.
There has to be a chance of success.
That's why you're here.
Hitler's Germany has seen its last sunrise. Can I count you in?
Any problem on Earth can be solved with the careful application of high explosives. The trick is not to be around when they go off.
10 minutes. 1 for the checkpoint. 2 for the walk. 1 to the bunker, 6 to get out. Plenty of time.
But remember, nothing ever goes according to plan.
Operation Valkyrie is in effect.
If they catch you, they will pull you apart.
If I fail, I'll come for you. All of you.
I know.
Do you realize what you've done?
We've been discovered.
Every second we stand here is a second lost.
If you want to live through the night, you'll do exactly as I say.
What makes you think you're stronger than the very momentum of history?
My Fuhrer, may I present Colonel Stauffenberg?
Valkyrie.
Hello and welcome to the latest film club. And on the 80th anniversary of the 20th of July plot, it's Valkyrie, starring Tom Cruise as Claus von Stauffenberg. This is part 2 of our special series on the attempted assassination of Adolf Hitler, with part 1 already out as Roger Moorhouse joined me to discuss the plots that came closest to killing Hitler. Roger returns with filmmaker Tim Hewitt to chat the film, the plan itself, and of course we have our awards to give out. Plenty more great history to come on the pod, so please do subscribe or follow. And if you can give this podcast a kind rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen, I'd be hugely grateful. But until then, I'll hand you over to me, Roger Moorhouse, and Tim Hewitt discussing Valkyrie. Roger, Tim, welcome back. Great to have you on discussing Valkyrie. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Ollie. Good to be here.
Hello, Roger.
Hi, Tim.
Right, so this is Valkyrie. This is a movie from 2008. And it is the July plot, the 20th of July plot. So if you are listening, listeners, on the day it is released or dropped, as it's described in podcast terminology, it is the 20th of July. It is the day, the anniversary, the 80th anniversary. And so last film club we did was The Longest Day with Tim, and that didn't come out of our discussion too well. And Valkyrie, I think I remember at the time being slightly, being criticised.
Yeah.
And I've watched it. I think I was just watching the last sort of 40 minutes this morning. And so I would say that's the 3rd or 4th time I've seen it. And actually, it's not as bad as all that. In fact, I actually thought it was quite good. So, Roger, you're the historian. Let's get Roger's initial take. What do you think?
I concur with that, actually, because I think, well, I, for one, when I heard that was being made, when the film was being made, which, as you said, it came out in 2008. Now, I had just written, I'm going to get my shameless plug in right at the beginning. My book, Killing Hitler, which came out in 2006, which covers both Stauffenberg and the other people that tried to target Hitler. So it's a slightly bigger book than just the 20th of July plot, but it does cover it. Now that came out in 2006. So I heard, the rumors that this film was being made, followed by the rumors that it was going to be Tom Cruise and Bryan Singer making it. And initially my heart sang, and then the next moment my heart sank when I realized it was Bryan Singer and Tom Cruise, because of course, Bryan Singer's, adventure films, and I think he did a Superman and, the X-Men films and that sort of thing. And I thought, oh my God, what's he going to do with this?
Well, he did do The Usual Suspects, Roger, which is brilliant.
Okay, yeah, I know. I mean, this was my instinct was, oh dear, can't it be someone more? Anyway,
is that also because did the phone not ring? Did Tom not call you?
Well, we can come to that. We can come to that. There is a little story there. So I was, I think like other people, sort of relatively close to the story, I was kind of dreading it a little bit, but I have to say, when I saw the film the first time, and obviously I have rewatched it for this, but when I saw the film the first time when it came out, I was actually really impressed. And I think its shortcomings are not in the filmmaking or the history. I think its shortcomings, to me, are probably to do with Tom Cruise. The history is actually pretty bang on. I think it's pretty good. There's a couple of corners cut and a couple of bits of the narrative simplified, which you can understand. You've got to create a narrative arc. You've got to create the tension. To some extent, you have to simplify a complex narrative. So all of that, I think, is broadly forgivable. But, generally, it tells the story really well, pretty close to how it actually was, as we understand it. So I watched it again. I actually just watched it this morning. And I think, I've always said, actually, I did a podcast with James Holland, did the We Have Ways podcast, and that we talked about this.
I'll edit that bit out, Roger.
Yeah, edit that out. But I was asked a rival podcast. And they asked me what I thought of the film, and I said, "Oh, it's a solid 7." And he said, "No, you can't do a 7. A 7's sitting on the fence. It has to be either a 6 or an 8." I thought, okay. And I said to them, well, I'll give it a 6. Actually, rewatching it, I would probably give it an 8. I thought it was really good.
Tim, from a filmmaking perspective, what did you think of it?
I, bizarrely, kind of along the same lines as what Roger just said about, I changed my opinion more recently. I saw it in the cinema twice when it first came out. And then weirdly, I saw it soon before you decided to do this podcast, because I remembered it was one of those films that I can't remember whether I enjoyed it or not the first time I watched it, and I knew it got lukewarm reviews when it first came out, and then I'd just completely forgotten the content. So I thought, I'm going to go watch this again because it's got an array of everyone who's ever been on the British stage, and Tom Cruise, and then written by Christopher McQuarrie, who wrote The Usual Suspects, directed by Bryan Singer. And then I thought, I'm going to watch it again. And I watched it again, and I was like, actually, it's quite good. I thought it was quite good, but it's not great. This is what I think. It's good, but not great, is essentially what I think. It has the same, I don't know if you've seen a film called Anthropoid with Cillian Murphy.
Yes.
About Operation Anthropoid, of course. Why wouldn't you name it just after the operation? Mm-hmm. And I try to equate it to something that I call wading through water, ankle deep. It's like, it's not an easy walk, but it's not an utter struggle. It's just, I feel like it just slightly drags a bit to the point where that's what doesn't make it great. Roger's saying about Bryan Singer, I don't think, except for The Usual Suspects, I don't think Bryan Singer's ever made a great film. I'm not an X-Men fan, but I like good superhero films. Apparently the first one everyone thinks is actually quite good. I thought it was right. Superman I didn't think was particularly brilliant. And funnily enough, I think that it may have been better served had Christopher McQuarrie, who now is quite a good director in my opinion, has done the recent Mission Impossibles, has done quite a good Jack Ryan film with Tom Cruise. They're big time partners, Tom Cruise and Chris McQuarrie now.
Is Tom Cruise in a Jack Ryan film now?
Did I say Jack Ryan?
Oh,
I meant
Mission Impossible.
no.
Jack Reacher.
Jack Reacher.
Yes,
Sorry.
Jack Reacher.
Yes.
Yes.
Which Christopher McQuarrie directed, and I think they're a really good partnership. And I sort of want to put it down to Bryan Singer's just slightly below par direction for me in this. It's factually evident that it's one instance after another in the chronology of the events that took place, which I think, there are moments of excitement, there are moments of tension, but I don't think it quite reaches the great men on a mission film that some, like we know, Where Eagles Dare, up there with the very best. It's exciting. There are moments. I mean, there are, the in the bunker.
The problem it has, I suppose,
tension.
But the problem it has, I suppose, is because we know Hitler survived.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe. I actually quite like Tom Cruise. I mean, I actually like him as an actor. I do think he gets a bit of a bad rep sometimes. I recently watched yet again Born on the 4th of July, and I don't think he's ever been better than in that film.
In that, yeah.
But I think he's quite solid in this. He doesn't. Funny enough, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He's okay.
I don't get annoyed by Tom Cruise's.
Solid. Tim is the word. I mean,
he's just
that's rather a tepid recommendation. If I'm saying he's solid,
he does look a lot like the real Stauffenberg.
Yeah,
particularly
he does.
in a profile photograph that was taken with him and next to Hitler. I thought, wow, they got the hair pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But the thing is that had he been cast by the character been played by someone else, I'm still not sure that you'd come out of the film going, that performance was astonishing, because simply the way the character was written. The only thing that I have that slightly jars is one American playing the lead, kind of like Napoleon that Ollie and I talked about. It sticks out that there's this American surrounded by British people and the odd German speaking English with a German accent.
And one speaking English in an American accent.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So I wanted to bring this up quite early on, so I'm glad you did. It's this sort of Where Eagles Dare curse. In Where Eagles Dare, it works beautifully. Because early on, and listeners will be familiar with us mentioning this, early on in the briefing scene in Where Eagles Dare, Patrick Wymark, in the briefing says, "Well, of course you're all fluent in German."
Yeah,
and so that
all you need to do is speak English, and the audience will know that you're actually speaking German when you're in the presence of Germans.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. It's they just speak and it's fine.
Yeah.
But in this, what happens in the beginning of the film is you have Stauffenberg, played by Tom Cruise, of course, writing away in his diary, "Dear diary, isn't Hitler an awful person?" In German, it's being it's in German, and then it changes.
And he's speaking German.
And he is speaking German.
Yeah. And then it's speaking,
and
then he starts speaking.
It's not bad German, actually. To be fair,
no.
I think his voice coach probably did a pretty good job there.
But it was weird because, but in the for the remainder of the movie, of course, everyone is speaking English.
Yeah.
In varying different accents, but all the documents are all still in German.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was weird.
Well, and Heil Hitler. I mean, what's technically the translation
of Heil Hitler?
Yeah. The literal translation surely should be said in English.
Yeah, Roger, what is the Heil?
Hail. It's like the old
the Roman thing.
Yes. And the thing is you get the odd character. I don't know why, but it really sticks out. What's the guy who comes out of Frome's office yelling? And for the first time we see Frome,
Oh yes,
they're about to go
Keitel,
in.
played by
it's
Kenneth
Keitel.
Branagh.
It's
Yeah,
Keitel.
and he's
yeah.
sort of like, you've got this sort of, and it really, it's like, what's this Brit doing amongst the Nazis? Oh no, of course he's not. He's German.
Well, strangely, this really didn't bother me somehow. The sort of the single American voice kind of did, but then I got over it.
Well, that's what
But
the filmmakers did their job then for you, Roger, at the very
Yeah.
beginning, doing that transition, which, by the way, was done in the last, funnily enough, Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise, was done in the last Mission Impossible, except in Russian. So you hear
Right.
and then it blends into English.
Yeah, and they did the same right at the beginning of A Hunt for Red October, one of my favorite films.
Yes.
The beginning of that
Alden,
with
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery doing really, really bad Russian. And then it sort of I think the camera pans out, and then he finds himself thankfully speaking English, or as best he could.
It's probably like it's a cinematic device, but the thing is that unlike, I mean, it's not so prevalent in this film, to be honest, because they are they are all German. But what, for example, Tarantino did brilliantly in Inglourious Bastards is that he used the language barrier as hypertension and serious suspense.
Yeah.
Trying to get away with speaking German with an actual with an accent, an area of Germany, Bavaria, wherever it was, the mountains, where the Gestapo guy picks up on it. Now that's the sort of tension that's lacking from someone like Where Eagles Dare or something. But of course they couldn't do it because Clint Eastwood, I'm sure, couldn't speak fluent German.
Yes.
But here, it's like, well, it's either make the film German or litter it with international stars, which is obviously more bankable.
Yeah.
Well, they were going to pick Thomas Kretschmann, who plays He
plays Raymer.
Yes. Yeah. And he was originally scheduled to play Stauffenberg.
Was he?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And he's a very good actor, actually.
He's brilliant.
Seen some of his German stuff. He's very good.
He's absolutely brilliant. Very good in Downfall.
Yes.
But he's
also frightfully handsome man, I must say.
He is. He's a handsome devil. He is.
See, I think Tom Cruise is quite attractive.
For
a movie,
you might be on your own there, Tim.
I think
he's sort of. The thing is,
he is.
He's truly the only. I still think the biggest movie star. Like he's still and has had that title for 30 years, maybe. He's still like an industry unto himself. I would say even more than Brad Pitt, even more than
Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks, because Tom Hanks is the everyman, and we love him for that. But Tom Cruise is he's like a studio by himself.
Yeah. But then you see, but look, let's come to Tom Hanks, because I think to me, as I said before, I think Tom Hanks is the weak link in this. Now I fully appreciate. Sorry, Tom Cruise. Yeah. I think Tom Cruise is the weak link here, and I fully appreciate that. Were it not for his involvement and that nexus with Christopher McQuarrie and Bryan Singer and so on, this probably wouldn't have been made at all. So it's not like they could just switch him out for somebody else. But when you look at, and you mentioned this, Tim, when you look at the acting talent that is in that film, the likes of Kenneth Branagh, Tom Wilkinson, even Tom Hollander, I thought, did a lovely job as Colonel Brandt, a sort of sniveling little Colonel Brandt. All British, as you said, all sort of great British actors. There's a nuance. So, and Bill Nighy's character is brilliant as well as General Albrecht. There's a nuance in there that they're sort of torn. They're torn between their, and this is why I thought one of the beautiful things about the film was it opened with the oath of allegiance. Making the point that this was a significant thing. This is not something that you can just kind of dismiss, and you can just, I mean, even historically, you can't look back and say, well, why didn't they just go and do that? Well, they felt bound by an oath of allegiance. This was a question of honor to them.
And it's mentioned again.
And it's mentioned later on.
Have you forgotten your oath? Yes.
Yeah. But so there's a sort of nuance built into this narrative that they create, which I think is really good. And it comes across very well through those actors. I think Kenneth Branagh was massively underused, to be fair, as Trescor. But there's a nuance there. There's a sort of a tortured element, and you see it particularly in Bill Nye. You don't really see that in Tom Cruise. He doesn't bring it out, and there was that element in Stauffenberg as well.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, one of my questions I had for you was what was Stauffenberg really like? Because I mean, we're talking July 44. The
Yeah.
war's not going well for them,
No.
and the resistance decides, okay, well, we'll rise up now. But
Yeah.
was he that much of a committed anti-Nazi, anti-Hitler?
He's a latecomer. He is a latecomer, which doesn't really come across in the book, in the film. So Tresco is much more the sort of spiritus movens of the whole thing. He had himself, using proxies. They show that the Smolensk attempt with the brandy bottle bomb, which was one of his. He actually tried with proxies. He tried another 3 times to target Hitler unsuccessfully. So that was his most famous one. But he really was one of those that really sort of laid the moral and psychological groundwork for a lot of what followed, because because of that oath of allegiance and because of the success that Hitler had enjoyed already militarily and politically, and the status that he had almost as sort of a demigod for a lot of Germans. You couldn't just sort of walk in and expect to people to follow you. There's that I thought came across really well when they talked about the civilian resistance and Karl Girdler and so on, where they said, we are respected politicians. They might have been 10 years before, but they kind of weren't by that point. They were considered washed up. So you were dealing with someone who was larger than life. And it took a great deal of moral bravery, and not physical bravery, but moral bravery. I the sort of bravery to go against what everyone else is saying. And that's a really tough thing to do. And for a long time, Stauffenberg didn't do that. That's what's interesting. So in a sense, he has, we talked about Schindler's List before, and what's wonderful about Schindler's List, both the book and the film, is that you have this moral arc. And we talked about that at the time, if you remember, that Schindler starts out as, essentially died in the wool Nazi. He's one, goes to Krakow to go and, enrich himself, but also work for the regime, all of that stuff. And then there's a switch where he realizes that this is all dreadful and murderous. And he switches to, from the devils to the angels. And that's what makes that narrative so fascinating. And to some degree, you've got the same thing with Stauffenberg. Stauffenberg goes into, he's an army officer. He actually participates in the occupation of the Sudetenland. He's there in the invasion of Poland in 1939. He writes some very spicy letters home to his wife, and not spicy in an interesting way, but spicy as in, these damn Poles are, they're all infected with Jewishness, and he's full on message in that sense. He's on message with the sort of Nazi narrative and the Nazi rhetoric regarding the Poles. And he's one of those. He's the poster boy in a way for that generation of German army military types who went along with it because they might have had to hold their nose because of the Nazis, because the Nazis they considered something from the street. He used to refer to them as the brown plague. Stauffenberg did. So he wasn't a Nazi supporter in that sense, but he was willing to go along with it because they were bringing Germany back up to what they saw as its rightful position. And restoring the army, of course, and they were army men, so they wanted a career in the army. So all of that was to the good. And this is where someone like Stauffenberg someone like Tresco is so interesting, because Tresco saw really early. He's a military man to his bones, but at the same time, he saw really early, like in the late 1930s, 37, 38, he saw that this regime was criminal. And you couldn't serve it in all good conscience. He said already, I think in 38, he said Hitler is a whirling dervish. That was the line that he used. He is a whirling dervish and he must be shot down. Now, to say that in 1938 as a German military man is astonishing because
Was
Hitler's
that said publicly?
no, privately, but
Even so, yeah.
even so,
and he rises up through the rank. He's played by Kenneth Branagh in this, but
Yeah,
he's a general,
yeah.
isn't he?
Yes, he is by 44. Yeah, absolutely. So he's he's the moving force behind all of this. And Stauffenberg comes to it quite late, is my point. So Stauffenberg comes to this quite late, and it's slightly to do with his injury in 43 in North Africa, which is shown in the film very well. So he has a sort of a Damascene conversion there. His survival, I think he sort of to some extent instrumentalizes to himself as some idea that he's preserved for posterity, for great things. And the timing of the thing, this is something I often take issue with. Is July 44? The Allies have just landed in Normandy. Army Group Center which again, it's shown in the film. Army Group Center on the Eastern Front is collapsing. So the writing is very, very much on the wall. For Germany in summer of 44, but that's not the primary motivation. The primary motivation of these guys, as I've said, is a moral revolt, and the timing is kind of accidental, because Stauffenberg was given that job as liaison for the replacement army. So he was given the job of presenting information to Hitler personally. So the problem they had always was that nobody had real access to Hitler. And then suddenly when he was given that job, he was the one that had the access.
And what kind of vetting happened to get, I know we're going off on a history tangent here, but it's fascinating stuff. But what kind of vetting did Hitler's sort of internal security group have? Did they sort of check, okay, this guy's a good Nazi, well, he can meet Hitler?
Well, they kind of trust. There's still some degree of trust in the army. So if his army superiors, who of course are essentially in on it, people like Olbricht, if they are saying that this is the right man for the job, then essentially he was the right man for the job, and he didn't really get questioned. There was still physical security in Hitler's headquarters and so on. So you couldn't just walk in there with a pistol. That didn't work. So there's physical security. There's they trusted the army. Interestingly, after July 44, they didn't trust the army anymore. So there's a much greater degree of kind of SS and regime control of the army itself after 44, understandably. But prior to that, they kind of trust it. If they make those decisions, then that's fine.
It's all what I found. There's another Where Eagles Dare kind of crossover in this film. I found with the actual kit they used twice to try and kill Hitler, which seems to be a British piece of kit, which doesn't bloody work.
A surprise.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, British
on two occasions. So the Cointreau bottles on the plane doesn't go off. Yeah. And then the bomb that's meant to, don't worry, it'll take everyone out in the room.
Well, that was his fault. That was his. And I think, again, I think that they did that really well. Like that, the tension there, the way they told the story, I thought worked really well. And there's a little bit of supposition because, we don't know exactly why, he didn't put the second charge in.
Wouldn't you put sort of, I mean, if it were me,
if
they checked with me, I would have said, double what you think you need and then double it again.
But they also didn't expect the venue to change.
Yeah.
But exactly, that's why they should have checked with me, because then, double.
Yeah.
I mean,
the venue will change.
But the thing with the venue is one thing. The thing with the bag being moved, which they showed again, Colonel Brandt, Tom Hollander character, who incidentally was killed that afternoon. So there's a degree of cosmic justice there. So there's that aspect. But the key thing is that had he put the second charge in, even unfused, there would have been a sympathetic explosion, which would have, effectively probably not doubled the explosion, but certainly made it much, much, much bigger. And then it would have rendered the fact that they were in, the change of venue and the moving of the bag both irrelevant. So really, it was the second charge that is crucial here. And they did show that. I mean, I think that moment, there is tremendous tension, and they bring it out in the film very well, where, he says, I have to go and change my shirt. And he says to the adjutant, can you give me a room my shirt, because he had that cut on his neck from shaving. And then he goes to fuse the charges. And that I think they did really, really well, because he did, by all accounts, he did insist on doing it himself, because he could have handed it all to von Heften, his adjutant, who was standing there and had all of his functioning fingers, right? Stauffenberg, of course, only had a thumb and 2 fingers on one hand. That's all he had from his injuries in North Africa. So he could have handed it all over to von Heften and said, right, you do it. But he was, taking ownership of the attempt. So, there's a sort of a perverse honor in that, I suppose. But that meant that he was a bit literally cack-handed in trying to do so. So that I always explained to myself as that's probably the reason why it took longer than it needed to, and that's why he didn't put the second charge in. Plus, nervous tension. He made the mistake. He didn't put the second charge in his bag. He didn't even have to fuse it, as I said. But that, again, the tension of all of that, I thought that came across really well. They rendered that really, really well in the film. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, the wolf's lair bit is really good, and actually looks like
it does, absolutely. I mean, anyone that's been there, I'm sure that must have been filmed somewhere near. I don't know where that passage was filmed, but it must be somewhere, up in that area, because it looks absolutely right in terms of the the sort of flora and the trees and so on. That's one thing I did want to bring up is the visual quality of it. I mean, it's not all CGI. There are, like the Berghof, Hitler's house is CGI'd, and even that's quite impressive. Stauffenberg's sort of stump and his missing fingers, that I thought was done really well. I didn't notice any sort of continuity errors there. I thought that was pretty well done.
And his eye was quite effective.
And his eye, yeah. And the locations they used, I mean, the real locations, when these places, you can kind of spot them. The Bendler block, obviously, they got used to the Bendler block, which is where it all happened. So that was where the executions happen at the end of the film. That was literally where those guys were executed. And also Goering's air ministry, which I think doubles. There's a couple of angles of the air ministry which double for different bits of the Berlin government district. And of course, Tempelhof Airport, which is a brilliant site. And there's a few bits, where they're mustering the troops, where Raymer is mustering his troops in that courtyard. That's in Tempelhof. And those are all genuine, that's not CGI. They're fantastic sites. So, visually, I thought it was brilliant. I thought
Berlin looked a little bit clean and tidy. Surely they were going through bombing raids every night.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It would have looked a bit more gap-toothed, I suppose, than it did. But in that sense, I think they didn't really give any big sort of panorama shots, did they? It was all kind of quite close in individual buildings and so on. So I suppose that was one way of getting around that particular problem. But no, visually, I thought it was really, really strong. What did you think of that aspect of it, Tim?
Yeah, I agree. There's just an X factor. I thought that the suspenseful scenes, the attempted when it goes wrong in the Wolf's Lair. There was another one. Actually, when
the brandy
bottle, when Cruise, except for there's one. I think this is direction. There are the occasional little moments where I thought that I don't know whether he would have done that. That's very unsubtle. When they get on the plane at the beginning, he's given him the brandy bottle, and then Kenneth Branagh really obviously looks at his colleague. I'm sure you would just carry on looking at the plane.
You give me a big wink.
It's kind of like a audience, I think Kenneth Branagh's really good, but I'm sure that's Brian Singer going, look round at him and go, whoa, he's on the plane.
I was going to say, Kenneth Branagh's not known for his acting, is he?
Yeah. But I mean, that probably wasn't Kenneth Branagh's choice. But no. I think the production design, spot on, absolutely. Costumes, great.
Yeah, costumes, great. Yeah.
Just an X factor is just slightly missing for me, even sometimes in the suspense scenes. Valkyrie playing Wagner obviously is important because it's the title of the film. quite an interesting shot of the record player going around.
Yeah.
In fact, the camera starts spinning so that the record player the actual record, slows down.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
On the
costume, Tim, hold your thought. Just on the costume, this is one thing I wanted you to clear up, Roger, for me.
Oh God.
They all have their German uniforms.
Yeah.
But they don't have their ribbons have been removed from some of their uniforms.
Yes.
Why is that?
That's a good question. I think. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I thought the uniforms aspect was good. It's one of those, like a politician. I'm not going to answer the question that you gave. I'm going to answer a slightly tangential question. I thought the uniforms were really good. Like, when they're in the field, like in the Tunisia scene, they're dirty. They're stubbly and dirty. I hate those films where they're all pristine when they're in battle, because that's just not how it was. So that I liked. And then when they're, then even there was a couple of scenes where you see them, with various soldiers and so on, and they all wear sort of slightly different uniforms or slightly different even shades of field grey as well, because that would have also been how it was. So that nothing is really uniform, nothing is perfect. So in that, I thought that worked really well. So whoever was responsible for the uniforms was I thought was bang on. But yeah, that question, I noticed that as well. So they have this almost like this sort of stitching mark across the top of the chest, which is where just the ribbons would have been attached. So you can see that they could do that. Now, whether that's a difference between, an everyday uniform and a dress uniform, if you had to sort of show everything that you had, then you'd have it on your chest. But then, for everyday use, you wouldn't do that. That's how I would rationalize that to myself. But I honestly don't know the answer for sure. So they had the stuff that, they had pinned on the Iron Cross first class was pinned on as a badge. And then a couple of them had the German cross, which is the big thing that looks like a fried egg, on the right-hand side of the chest. So those they obviously kept on all the time. So this, I actually looked at a lot of that stuff, and because I'm a bit nerdy like that.
Why is Stauffenberg's, sorry to interrupt you. Why is Stauffenberg's a slightly different shade of?
Yeah, is that I think that's my point, is that they're different uniforms from different times and different factories, had slightly different look. That's my point.
I see.
That them all being a perfect facsimile of the next one and the next one is just not really realistic. When you look at actually, contemporary photographs and footage, people are always wearing slightly different uniforms, even when they're in the same kind of, unit or they're all Wehrmacht or whatever. They're all still wearing slightly different uniforms, and that's just how it was. So I think that actually came across really well.
Okay. Well, before we get to our awards, we can just talk very briefly. Whilst the critics maybe weren't over the moon about it, it actually it made a lot of money. So it cost around $80 million to make, which is quite a lot actually. But made over 200 million.
Wow.
Which
okay.
And a lot of that abroad. In Germany, they were very uncomfortable with the Scientologist playing Stauffenberg.
Yeah. Yes,
it's a bit harsh.
But they did get over themselves, and they did grant license to them to film, right in the middle of Berlin, in a lot of very salient sites like the Bendler Block, like the Air Ministry and Tempelhof as well. So yeah, I mean, there was a furore about the whole Scientology thing, but actually, I think the Germans more than played their part in that, because they did allow them to go to all the best places.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering whether Tom Cruise would have caused a bit of an uproar anyway. Regardless, had he not been a Scientologist,
to some extent, yes.
Yeah. See, I mean, he didn't. For me, he didn't. It was a role where he wasn't really doing anything showy, in inverted commas. It may be the only film that I can think of where he doesn't run.
Yeah,
which I'm certain is in his usual contract. Tom Cruise must run.
Yeah,
at some point. I mean, he may actually no. Maybe he does at the beginning in Tunisia. a
nails
little
it in
bit.
the firm. That's probably
Does
his best
he?
running in the firm, isn't it?
Yeah, the firm's pretty with the briefcase.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure he does
overcoat.
run in the Tunisia scene. I think he
Just gets in a car.
stumbles a bit, Tim. I
Yeah.
don't think he does any running.
Maybe it is. Then maybe he simply. And so for me it wasn't. I actually didn't have a problem with I get what, going back very quickly. I do get what you mean about his character, though. I think it could have done with more of an arc.
Yeah.
We flit in and out of his family vaguely.
It needed fleshing out, and the point,
Yeah.
and what made it so obvious is that the other characters seem to be much more nuanced. Look at From, you look at Ulbricht. Ulbricht, I thought, was a brilliantly nuanced character, and Bill Nye played brilliantly.
And Tom Wilkinson really
Tom
does
Wilkinson, fantastic.
He kind of steals the scene.
He's really good.
Yeah, I agree. So they are so nuanced and so well done that you think, whether that's the writing or whether that's the acting, I don't know. But you want the same degree of nuance in Stauffenberg.
Yeah, I agree.
And it didn't give it.
My favorite bit with Tom Cruise is when he arrives back from the Wolf's Lair, having failed to kill Hitler, and he's in the airport and he's handed the phone.
Yeah,
because obviously I haven't initiated the Valkyrie order,
and
he's hearing, basically, it's all going horribly wrong, and he sort of puts the phone down and he's like,
yeah.
If you want something done, do it yourself. And then he has to give orders to Ulbricht.
And I actually quite like the scene.
Excellent.
I do like the scene where, I like the scene where he gets past the guard by faking the phone call.
That idea,
which did that happen?
He did bluff his way out. Yeah. I mean, this is another thing, precisely how that was done. I don't think has been recorded, but he certainly bluffed his way past. And it would have been 3 sets of guards. It wouldn't have been just one, because there were concentric rings of security. So it would have been something similar to that.
And I thought not only his character, but also Tom Cruise convinced me that he was talking to someone on the phone.
Yeah.
But and I actually really like the scene where he does go to Hitler's house.
Yeah.
I do have a question though about, and it's really for actually both you, Roger and Oliver. Hitler, in the film, pretty much every single scene he's in, he vaguely reminded me of someone who should have been in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's almost like all his cohorts, his subordinates, would in a room secretly say, "He's gone, man. What's wrong with him?
Falling apart."
Yeah.
He just has this look and this, like. Was that at that point 44? Was he basically gone?
Yeah, no. I think, that's is it David Bamber, I think, plays him, isn't it? Who does look like him. And a lot of the problem with people playing Hitler is that they don't look like him enough. And I suppose he made a pretty decent fist of his Hitler portrayal, but perhaps of necessity, and maybe again this is the writing, but it did again. I agree with you. It seemed, well, for one thing, it seemed rather two-dimensional.
And it starts when he sits down at the table and Kenneth Branagh, they're all there around the table. And they serve that meal, and he just sort of blank stares.
Yeah,
like as if he's virtually catatonic.
Yeah,
and
I suspect that's in the writing.
Right,
in a sense
slightly annoyed me that every time you see him, he's like this.
I mean, Hitler actually, I mean, in terms of his health, his health takes a downward dive after the July bomb plot. So that kind of triggered all sorts, or brought to the fore a lot of things, because he was quite badly injured, cuts and bruises and so on. One of his eardrums burst and so on. So that supposedly they reckon that brought on his Parkinson's, or brought it out more in a more marked way. If we assume he did have Parkinson's, which is a kind of general assumption. He is basically on all sort. He's a walking kind of drugs cabinet. Uppers, downers. He has uppers to get up in the morning, and literally has downers to go to sleep at night. So
and then in the failed attempt he's virtually silent until suddenly he slams his fist on the table with no where did that come from?
So I mean, yeah, as a portrayal of Hitler, it's not the best. I mean, look at Bruno Ganz in Downfall, I think, for that. But yeah, I agree. He was, what didn't come across is that, he was, fantastically charismatic, and that was obviously waning by 1944, but it's not yet quite where, it's almost, his portrayal there is almost Biden-esque, isn't it? He's someone that almost seems to be at the end of his life. So yeah, yeah, that is a black spot for it. Yeah, I agree.
For listeners, this is just after the debate.
Yes.
in the States. Just
a Biden-esque
point that out
performance from David Bamber.
Biden-esque, yeah.
I think if we're talking about performance, there is a slight my weak spot in terms of performance, and I adore him usually in real life as a stand-up comedian. I do have a slight issue with Eddie Izzard as General Eric how do you pronounce it?
Feldgiebel.
Very odd casting.
Yeah. A little strange. There's a scene that he shares with Tom Cruise and to be honest, I think Tom Cruise comes off very well in this scene, in the men's toilets.
Yes.
And
he puts his eye in his drink.
Yes. Yeah. And for me, I couldn't get past, it felt like Eddie Izzard was actually doing one of his film impressions in his stand-up routine, doing I'm playing the very evil German man, with a slight wink in his, but then you realize, oh shit, he's being serious, and this is serious. and it just falls a bit flat for me, because that role, that character, and I'm sure he was of the utmost importance in the mission.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably important.
Yes,
when he's given the job of cutting communications after the bomb is meant to go off. And and to be honest, I sort of didn't really listen to what he was saying after a while in that scene, because I was thinking, is this Eddie Izzard's doing a little? I'm not sort of being nasty about his performance, but I kind of am, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's a difficult thing because it's a bit part role, but it does play. It is crucial to the narrative and so on. So it kind of needs. I suppose it needs someone of some significance and talent, but who is happy to play a bit part role, I suppose. But so I don't know. Yeah, it didn't strike me that it didn't feel. It didn't feel like that kind of wooden.
It's.
Can we just do? What I wanted to ask actually is that actually, or maybe I suspend this for when we're going to have our book club conversation, Roger.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of what if it had actually what if the pretense that Hitler had died, even though he hadn't, had continued for another 12 hours, could they then have what I mean, sure, the fact that he hadn't been killed, surely Stauffenberg knew then it's not
the game's up. The problem they had was that Stauffenberg had to, and this comes across in the film very well, had to be in two places at once, right? So he had to be the assassin, and he had to also be the one that galvanized the plotters themselves, because they were all noble-minded and all of that, but they were rather skittish, shall we say, and rather a little bit too ambivalent. So he needed someone to grab them by the scruff of the neck, which is what he does when he comes back. But by that time, 3 hours have been lost, right? The time that he's been in the air coming back from Rastenburg. So that was the fundamental problem. Had they had more time, that blackout could have succeeded from Feldgiebel. I kind of can't see it. I think the problem is, and this was a criticism that was made by one of the circle of resistors, whose name was Hans Casavius, one of the civilian resistance, and he said he's one of the few that kind of survived, and he said basically the blood should have run. He said they should have been more brutal, like they should have gone in and shot people. And what they wanted to do was to use Valkyrie kind of as a ruse to allow them to take power, in effect, by inherit power by assassination, rather than actually take power, grab it by the throat and take it. And that they didn't want to do and didn't feel able to do. Stauffenberg did. He was kind of brutal enough to have done it. But the others really didn't, and particularly the civilian resistance as well. So I think there was such fundamental failings in that respect, and they're fundamentally unrealistic about what could be achieved as well. They wanted to make peace with the Western Allies and keep fighting the Soviets. That wasn't going to happen in 1944. It was impossible. So there's a lot sort of wrong with the plot in general. It was wildly ambitious. But then, as Trescor himself said, and I think that came out in the film as well, that Trescor as a sort of motive force, he said, well, we have to do it. We have to show that, we weren't all like him. That was the quote right at the end as well. He says, we have to do it even if we fail, because we have to show that we weren't all like him. Powerful
and
words.
did Dr. Carl
Girdler.
Yeah. Because he's funny enough says when when Stauffenberg says, we got to kill Hitler, Girdler says, well, I would have thought that someone like you would have come up with something a little more, did he say humane, or he's seemingly opposed to this idea that surely there's a way of doing it without killing Hitler.
There were a lot of, because they saw themselves as on the side of the angels, right? They were on the side of morality.
Yeah.
So just assassinating and murdering your opponent is you can see how it kind of sticks in the craw to some extent. And it was the military men that kind of, were the ones generally that said, because of the significance of Hitler as a sort of demigod for the people and for the regime, and that the oath of allegiance issue that we talked about, you had to kill him to sort of free everybody of that spell. So that there were lots of people that said, "Oh, we can just arrest Hitler and we'll put him on trial." No, that was never going to work.
It's also not with the judge you saw at the end of the movie. It wouldn't work.
Not with Freisler, yeah, absolutely.
But what with the what if as well? The fact that it would Hitler have been enough with Goering and Himmler still around. Because I know that they were saying, if you need to get Himmler
more,
as well.
more of them, yeah.
But
Himmler certainly. I think Himmler, the ones that are most dangerous at this point, certainly Himmler, Goebbels definitely. Goering really isn't. Goering's a bit of a sort of fat, drug-addled Sybarite at this point.
Because he was in the house as well.
He was in the scene at the Berghof, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's not one that you necessarily needed to target, I suppose. But their mindset was just try and hit as many as possible, which is understandable. But the key one is obviously Hitler.
Right. So let's move along to our awards, and so we'll start with best performance. And the thing is that Cruise so dominates the film. If we do best performance, because we also have a best supporting performance, so that's our backup. So I have a few ideas for best supporting, but for best performance, I was gonna sort of raise Tom Wilkinson up into, because he's in it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
And I just think he died this year very sadly.
Yeah. Yes.
Young. I think he was only sort of early 70s when he died. Very sad. And he's just quite brilliant as this sort of duplicitous,
yes,
unreliable, ruthless, cunning, slightly incompetent.
He's very good at these sorts of. I mean, he's played some roles kind of similar, so brilliantly. Things like The Patriot with Mel Gibson during the Civil War.
Revolutionary
War, sorry. And in fact, way back into the 80s, he's played some brilliant roles like this. He does it so well, but he
was very good in a Lovejoy episode.
Really? And great in Michael Clayton, which I know you like, the George Clooney film. But so he does these sort of roles so brilliantly. But I'm not saying that we should take anything away because he has played roles like this before, but he does dominate the scenes he's in, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I had scribbled down here, Tom Wilkinson. I liked Bill Nye's Albrecht as well. Good. I thought he really encapsulated that kind of skittishness that, you know, they knew what was the right thing to do, but they just couldn't quite bring themselves to do it, you know.
And it's actually a very still performance for Bill Nye. He usually, not usually, but you know, he plays the Love Actually, the Richard Curtis type character, you know, so brilliantly with his kind of like almost like a hippie quality. And then
kind of louche. And then this was anything but louche.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
He was button tight on this one.
Demonstrative in Pirates of the Caribbean as the squid face guy.
Yes.
But this was very still and really quite internal, which I liked a lot.
But you saw it in his eyes and in, you know, like a quiver of the lip and all that.
Yeah.
So I loved I loved Bill Nye in this.
Yeah. When they are in the scene with Tom Wilkinson, and then he says, we were thinking the same thing, and Cruise gives him a little look, and he just sort of, it's a slightly embarrassed, really subtle look. I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. So I'd be happy with either of those.
Well, poor old Tom isn't getting mentioned in the conversation.
I genuinely put it down a bit to the writing.
I agree.
I think he could have bumped up a lot of just sort of either more internal character, not monologue, because that would just be in the performance. But I think the background, I don't know, it's an interesting quality, because it could have been interesting maybe seeing him in his earlier days, like you said, Roger, where he was, you know, all for the cause.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it's just not a.
Yeah, there's also one stage. There was a line that I think I detected, where he says, "Yes, and we'll put an end to the Holocaust," and they mentioned that in a meeting with them all. And I can't imagine Stauffenberg. Were they calling it the Holocaust during the Holocaust? And if they were, surely you're thinking, okay, we are the baddies in this one.
Yeah, no, I don't think they were. But I mean, that was a central part. This should be said. I think I alluded to it before about that moral revolt. Knowledge of the Holocaust was a central part of what motivated them, because this to them was Germany, you know, dragging its name through the mud by doing what it was doing. So they saw themselves as trying to rescue Germany's honor, in effect. Right. So that was a crucial part of it.
Well, I hear what you're saying about Bill Nighy. I just thought he was a little bit too Bill Nighy, even if it was a subdued Bill Nighy. I'm still going with Wilkinson myself.
Okay.
So you could argue that Wilkinson was just too Wilkinson.
Possibly. I mean, I think he had a great haircut, and it was a particularly sort of Nazi type haircut, whereas I mean, not that that's got anything to do with performance, but he just looked a little bit more convincing.
Right. Okay.
Very well.
So okay, we'll go with Tom Wilkinson.
Tom Wilkinson wins the Simon Baker Award.
Right, excellent.
The best performance. Right. Now we'll do best scene. Now, actually, I was racking my brains. There aren't that many brilliant scenes, I didn't think. I thought Branner's Cointreau plane Hitler visit was good, but then Tim's kind of undermined it slightly with the huge
the nod and a wink.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is also as a scene, you know, he is just handing him a bottle of brandy.
Yes.
You know, and then he gets on the plane, but we don't see the plane. We don't, you know, inside the plane we don't see, or you know, anything. I mean, I would say that his visit to Tom Hollander afterwards is actually more interesting.
That's true, and that's one of those bits, actually, to be nerdy, if I may, for a very small moment. That was not actually Trescor that did that. It was his adjutant. So that was one of those moments where, you know, I kind of, my historian's brain went, they're doing something wrong. But you know, obviously, why would you add an extra character? You know, so anyway, but yeah, that scene was really good though. That you're right. That scene had a tremendous tension to it.
The Wolf Slayer attempt is very good.
The whole attempt, I think, is, and it's as I said before, it's very, very well done. It's very close to what we understand as the truth, if you like, of the story. So that I thought really blended the drama, the sort of the visual and the history really, really well. So I thought that was good. But that's the nuts of the film.
I've always felt that scene was, it feels like the centerpiece of the film, but I do think that it could have been truly nail biting, like absolutely. But maybe it couldn't because we know he survived. So I don't know. Like really edge of the seat.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly what would have ranked it up a notch, but I also actually quite like the executions at the end.
Yes.
Well, I agree.
Yes.
They're good, but I thought before that is the Thomas Kretschmann scene where he has to go and see Goebbels.
Yes.
I mean, Kretschmann is brilliant in this.
Yeah.
Like even early on, where I think they have to alert the Berlin army, whatever.
The garrison.
The garrison. Yeah, they have to alert them.
Yeah.
This a week before, or a few days before.
Yeah, it was 5 days before. Yeah.
And so this was interesting because Kretschmann's like, "What's going on here? Why am I being made to do this?"
Yeah.
So he's quite clever. This commander who he obviously he smells a rat.
Yeah.
The first time, and then the second time, he definitely smells a rat.
Yes.
And the scene with Goebbels is, I thought, excellent.
Can I just throw two little scenes in?
Yes.
One, which I think Tim mentioned before, which is Stauffenberg bluffing his way out of the Wolfschanze with that guard, where he says, I've got Field Marshal Keitel on the phone. Would you like to tell him yourself? What's his name? What's his name?
Yeah.
And he hands him the phone. And the guy just goes, no.
I thought actually I was a bit more on the edge of my seat in that scene than in the actual attempt. I don't know.
But I think that was a lovely scene.
What would he have done if he just gone, okay, fine, I'll talk to him?
Yeah, exactly. But a lowly sergeant, and you've got Field Marshal Keitel on the other end of the line. He probably would have reacted in the way that he did, which was to go, oh no, couldn't possibly talk to Field Marshal Keitel. So that I thought was a lovely scene and very short, but really, really well done. And there was something else. What was the other one? What was the other one I had on the tip of my tongue?
Was it it wouldn't have been Ian McNeice shows up,
Oh yeah, there was that.
Hitler's alive.
Yeah, and sort of stomps through the building saying Hitler's alive. No, actually, it was the teletype thing. That they went back to the teletype office,
and they all put
their hands up. That was the one. Yeah. That I thought was really well done.
Yeah, that was clever because that showed
it was very clever and it had real drama, but it showed you actually how the sort of mechanics of the whole thing was supposed to operate and then how it fell apart, which I thought was a really important part of the storytelling. And the thing with all the hands going up, it was genius. It was a lovely
and I
scene.
thought the commander was very sensible in saying, like, send all the messages and then stop.
Again, I thought that was a really good scene. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, what are we going to settle on as our favorite?
Uh-huh.
It sounds like you both really like the telephone call.
I do. I really like that scene.
Yeah, I do.
But I also actually like the way Cruise plays it. It's just very, very simple.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's give it to him because he's going to be upset about not winning best performance.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so then we'll do best supporting performance. And
Kretschmann.
Yeah, I'm Kretschmann for me.
Yeah,
he's just so good.
What I really do like Tom Hollander.
Yeah,
yes, that's true. Tom Hollander's good.
He's always
sort of sniveling.
Yeah,
snivelly. Yeah,
he's always good in everything he's in.
Yeah, no, true.
And we haven't mentioned Branner either. I thought Branner was good.
I thought Branner was underused in this.
He was underused. He was a bit not spectacular, I don't think.
Not like Conspiracy when he was.
Yeah, I mean he's amazing in that. Actually, I think that maybe Conspiracy is the best thing I've seen him in.
I agree.
Sometimes his Shakespeare can be very over the top.
Yeah.
And I just find his Poirot a bit lackluster. In his films, actually, his direction's a bit lackluster as well. But he sometimes when he's being directed by someone else, I think he's very good. But I don't know. I actually love a lot of the British ensembles. Terence Stamp, we haven't.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned Terence Stamp.
Yes,
simply
as
one of the
Beck.
best.
Yeah,
fits it perfectly.
he does.
Great voice. Unfortunately, it doesn't have enough to do, in my opinion, either. Kevin McNally, I think, is brilliant.
But Ludwig Beck was a field marshal. I mean, it's extraordinary that they managed to get someone who was that senior.
Yeah, he'd been kind of shuffled sideways by then, so he was. I mean, he's one of those that had flirted with the resistance for a while. I mean, what they missed, and I suppose it would have, to some extent, taken away from the dramatic tension, was when he says, "Can I have a pistol?" And
I was going to say that's a great scene, actually.
It is a great scene, but I mean, the reality of that was that I don't know how you fail to shoot yourself in the head, but he'd failed. I mean, he did shoot himself in the head, but he didn't manage to kill himself.
He did do it in a weird angle, actually.
Yeah,
like that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So what sort of state was he in afterwards?
Well,
he had a hell of a headache.
The record says he failed to execute or to commit suicide, so he had to be dispatched by a sergeant, apparently. Which you can imagine, the optics of a field marshal being dispatched by a sergeant is one thing. But that, I suppose that would have, to some extent, maybe, derailed us from that, inevitable leading to the execution at the end. So maybe that's why they glossed it. But that's one of those bits that I was kind of waiting to happen, and it didn't happen.
So we need to decide: is it Kretschmann or is it Hollander? I think Hollander's just not in it enough. Whereas
you're probably right.
Yeah,
Kretschmann's always great.
Yeah, let's go with Kretschmann. He's a handsome bugger anyway.
He wins the Gary Oldman Award for Best Supporting Performance. Right, so now, Roger, this is your turn. This is over to you. Most inaccurate scene.
Well, I mentioned the retrieval of the brandy bottle bomb. I mean, it by all accounts, it did kind of happen that way, but it wasn't Trescall that did it. He sent his adjutant. So there wouldn't have been that sort of necessarily that sort of rather tense scene that we talked about as a possible contender. So that was a weird one. Little thing. I mean, I think the historical details are generally really good in this, as I said before. Did
he actually listen to Wagner's record in his house?
Stauffenberg.
I mean, is that the connection?
I don't know.
It's likely, isn't it?
It was pretty, Wagner was pretty universal, but no, I don't know that either way, to be honest. Little things. One thing that stood out for me, again, it's quite nerdy, was that Hitler's plane, which they got the number right, was D-2600, if you remember. It had it emblazoned on the wings. They had it as a Ju-52. It was actually a Focke-Wulf Condor that Hitler used, which is I think the problem there is that they probably had access to an airworthy Ju-52, but not to a Condor. So as far as I read, I think that scene was done. I don't think it was CGI'd. I think that was actually with a real plane.
Perhaps it's a nod to Where Eagles Dare.
I don't know, but that wasn't what Hitler's plane was. So that's one little point that I would sort of throw in. There was one scene where I think it said German Interior Ministry. It had all of these flags, like all in which I just thought the other stuff was really good because they used Goering's Air Ministry really well. They used Tempelhof really well. That one scene, and I think that's like the Berlin Messe. I think the building is the Berlin Messe. So the building is of the period, but then all of those flags. I mean, that's just kind of
too many.
It just wouldn't really have been like that, Maybe on a sort of high day and holiday it would have been like that, but on an ordinary Thursday in 1944, probably not. So that kind of stuck in the throat as well. But say generally, in terms of the history, I'd give it an A in terms of the history representation.
Well, that's good. Well, I think we have to settle on a scene, so we'll go with the brandy bottle. That seems the most significant. I'm always a little bit forgiving of filmmakers if they use the wrong plane or the wrong tank or
Yeah.
something. It
Okay.
doesn't
Fair
really
enough.
matter.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Um, right. Okay. Then, oh, now before we get to I think we've got one more, which is the legacy rating. Roger, you did mention there was some kind, was there the filmmakers or you had some kind of, because
Oh
you wrote
yeah.
a couple of years
Yeah.
before.
So yes,
What's the story?
this
Oh,
is
yeah.
my sort of interaction with all of this which is quite weird. So my book came out in 2006. It came out in the US. It was reasonably successful. And when I heard that this was happening, through my agent, I kind of got the address for the production company involved. So I think it was Cruise's own production company. And I sent a copy of the book over with a covering letter basically saying, I wrote this, it came out last year. I heard you write it, I heard you producing this film. I hope this might be of interest, something very kind of British and soft soap like that. And I heard nothing, of course. I mean, to be fair, I did have a look when I watched it just now. I looked at the credits, and they do cite Peter Hoffman, Professor Peter Hoffman, in their special thanks too. And Hoffman is the man for the German resistance, absolutely, bar none. So if they had Hoffman on board, brilliant. They didn't need me. But anyway, I got back about 6 months later. I got a letter back from some flunky at this production company, and it sort of was 2 lines, and it said, "Thank you for your submission. It has not been read and has been destroyed." Which I thought was, well, that's a bit.
They burnt the book.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that's a bit unnecessarily brutal.
In a controlled explosion.
Exactly. So, but I think I mean I put it down to American kind of litigation culture. I'm sure they had to say, well, it hasn't been read and we don't have it anymore. So that there's no possible way I could make any claim to intellectual content of what they produced. But quite a bizarre letter. So that was my interaction with the production.
Oh, well, that's great. It shows how, gracious you are in being generous to the film.
Well, I'm over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a few years.
Well, then if we go for our legacy rating, what I like to do is you have a look at the Oscars that year and you work out if the Oscar people made a mistake. And this year, so last episode, or a couple of episodes ago, we did the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, and the Oscar year then was really, really strong. I think this was a year later than this. This year, I think it's not a strong year. So Slumdog Millionaire won. It's a musical. Curious Case.
Is it a musical?
Yeah, it's a musical, isn't it? It feels like it is. There's some dancing at the end.
Okay.
All right. Maybe not strictly speaking a musical. Okay, fine. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Odd film.
That was weird.
Frost Nixon. It's okay. Good.
It's quite good. It's quite
Milk.
suspenseful.
Milk.
All right.
And The Reader.
Yeah, it was quite good.
Yeah, The Reader was good. I like that.
Yeah, but I mean, none of those are particularly.
Actually, that was the year. That was the year where everyone thought, because Mickey Rourke won the Golden Globe for The Wrestler, and everyone thought he was going to win the best Oscar actor. But then Sean Penn won for Milk, and I felt that film was a bit
formulaic.
Yeah, but I don't think. I'm not sure Valkyrie would have been up there for Oscars.
No, I'm not arguing that it should have been. It's just quite helpful when you kind of place it in the context of the other films. It didn't get any nominations. Not even for best costume.
Yeah, I think they would have deserved something like that. Yeah, something like costume, something a bit sort of liminal. And obviously, with apologies to all the costumiers out there, but Yeah, I think it probably deserves something there. I think in terms of legacy, to take it away from your criteria of, using the Oscars and that as a sort of framework, analytical framework. But I think if you wanted to show, a group of school students, an intro into this story, and we know they're sort of famously kind of, they're famously visual. So they don't necessarily want to read a book. I think you could do a lot worse than to show them this film. And I think that's quite a recommendation, because I wouldn't normally say that necessarily. I tend to be quite critical of, and often the closer you are to a subject, in terms of the more you know about it, the more critical you are of other people trying to put it on screen, because of all those corners that need to be cut and all of that sort of thing. But I would say that about this. I think it is very solid. I said at the beginning, if it's not a 7, and I can't, and I wouldn't put it at a 6, I'd probably put it an 8. I think it's a really solid piece of work.
Well, it made
historically,
it made quite a lot of money in sort of home entertainment, and it's on Amazon Prime, and it's been pushed quite highly on Amazon Prime at the moment. So I think it's had a life. It's not like a few films we've done on this that have basically been forgotten.
Yeah.
I don't think it's at that level. So I'd say it's 3. I'd give him a 3 out of 5, which is a 6 out of 10. So maybe maybe we give it a bit more. But I don't know if you think.
Well, it sounds like historically it could be even higher in terms of its historical accuracy. If you're saying,
so that maybe that raises it up to a 4 out of 5 legacy.
That would be my point, is that, if you wanted someone to try and understand the history, you could show them that film, hour and a half of that film, a bit more.
I kind of look at it as, if this were completely fictional, I would come out going, well, it's right.
Yeah, okay. That's maybe why I'm judging it slightly higher than you, Tim, because I'm looking at how they're representing that history.
Yeah, it does bump it up even for me, knowing that it's actually pretty spot on.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because it technically shouldn't make it more suspenseful or anything. But because I'm like, I would be interested to know what you think of, because I kind of equate them quite similarly, but in terms of not only the fact that it's based on historical fact, but also tension-wise and suspense-wise, is the Cillian Murphy film Anthropoid, which I have seen a couple of times. It feels like they delve a bit more into character in that film than in this one. But historically, apparently it's quite accurate.
Yeah. I enjoyed that. There were 2, weren't there? There were 2.
There was one with Martin Shaw back in the 80s as well.
Martin Short.
Shaw.
Right.
SHAW.
Yeah. Really?
I thought there were 2 that came out at similar times.
Man with the Iron Heart.
Yeah, was it that?
Yeah.
I thought Anthropoid, the Cillian Murphy one, I thought that was really good, and I could watch Cillian Murphy all day long. So I thought that was really good. I think, I mean, they are similar, I suppose, in that respect, and it does treat its history, pretty well. It stays close to the, close to the sort of the truth of it, as it were. So I would put it on a similar level, to be honest. I mean, I would have to rewatch that, but I think rewatching Valkyrie now, the sort of nuance that comes out in those lesser characters, as it were, the Albrechts and the Froms that we've talked about, that's what made it for me, I think. The nuance there, the character that they managed to bring out, which they didn't do in Stauffenberg, which we said, but that's what made it for me. I thought that it gave real nuance to it.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I think
8 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. 4 out of 5, 8 out of 5.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of introducing a new category of most useless piece of kit. And it'd be the German. I mean, in this, if we were to do it, it'd be the bloody bomb, wouldn't it?
Well, it worked. It worked in the end.
Yeah, but it kind of worked. It used the wrong. Killed the wrong guy, though.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It did kill 4 people, so it did its job. It just unfortunately didn't kill the right guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just double up next time. That's my recommendation.
Exactly. Double up, as he should have done.
Do what
Right.
he does in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where he literally blows the whole train up. Think you used enough dynamite there, Butch? And the whole carriage explodes.
Exactly. It's a category that can work, I think, especially when we get to Where Eagles Dare. Because all the kit that works brilliantly in Where Eagles Dare is German, and the one piece of kit that doesn't work is the British Sten gun right at the end.
Well, they always jammed, didn't they? As in Anthropoid jammed then as well.
Of course.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, thank you both. This has been fantastic. And listeners, thank you very much. Links to Roger's books, Killing Hitler, and also not to forget Berlin at War, which
Indeed.
which is very good on the home front, I guess, for Germany.
Yeah.
And during this time, this plot. Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ollie. Thanks, Tim. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Roger. And you too.
See you next time.
Will do.
Thanks so much for listening. Next month's film club is indeed Anthropoid, starring Cillian Murphy and Jamie Dornan, with Roger and Tim returning. But until then, thank you and good night.